Yakuza 7 is the first mainline entry to shake up the formula and fully embrace its JRPG roots that have been there from the start. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little worried leading up to the release, but I can happily say that Yakuza 7, or Yakuza Like a Dragon as it's officially called, has made an excellent transition from action game to turn-based JRPG. It keeps all the hallmarks that I love from the series while breathing some new life into the franchise.
No more heroes, it's hero, the king who can't show nobody but yourselves, nothing less to do. No more heroes, no time to stand still if you're gonna be number one.
Travis, it's kill or be killed.
So leading up to the game, I had a few key worries about its gameplay now that it's switched to being a turn-based RPG. Menuing, since JRPGs are almost always very menu heavy. Are they going to be well designed visually and not take forever to go through anytime you need to get something? Combat speed. Would battles feel really slow and unsatisfying? Encounter rates, especially in the endgame. It has been an issue since the very first Yakuza game that unless you have the item to turn off combat, once you're near the end of the game, combat encounters become super tedious as they just get in your way of making progress. They take just long enough to feel like an annoyance in your way, but they aren't rewarding enough to not feel like a waste of time. And finally, grinding. Would the game just have an annoying amount of grinding to make progress feel non-existent? No complaints when it comes to menuing. It's fast, snappy, and there are a bunch of shortcuts for things like spells. I never felt exhausted because I had to spend 5 minutes in a menu changing everyone's gear because there are things like apply best items and auto-equip weapons once you buy new stuff at stores. Combat speed is fine, it's not too slow, but I don't think I would complain if it was like 10 to 20% faster. Encounter rates can still be annoying once you reach endgame. It does bother me that their only solution is still just to get the charm that makes you not have combat encounters, but I honestly don't know where and when I got the item. I just eventually realized I had it. We are 16 games in at this point, counting spin-offs and remakes. You'd think they'd come up with a better solution, but oh well. Grinding was surprisingly a non-issue for 90% of the game. While some of the damage scaling is kind of wonky, where enemies that are only a level or 2 below you basically deal 1 damage and enemies that are near 3 to 5 levels above you are one-shotting you, I felt like I was properly leveled until the Majima boss fight at the end of the game, which became a gigantic stone wall for you to go grind in the arena the game introduced right before this fight. Enemies in this area were even the same level as me, being around level 35, but then Majima is level 50 and tells you to fuck off and go to grind. With the change in gameplay came a change to the world structure. In all of the previous games, the whole town would be open for you to explore either right away or shortly after story progression. Like for example, you could explore the city in Yakuza 1 after chapter 4, which is only about 2 to 3 hours into the game. In 7, the city is actually piecemealed to you as areas are gated off by high-leveled enemies, which will push your shit in if you try to step into their territory. I have no complaint about this change outside of some of the sub-stories having to be put on hold since the shop I need to buy an item from was on the other side of town and I would die if I tried to go get it. It's a neat little mix-up to the formula and makes the city feel more foreign since it's both new to Ichiban and the player, as we've been spending the entire series in pretty much Kamurocho and Sotenbori exclusively. This also further drives home the themes of Yakuza 6 of times are changing, we can't just have our old adventures like we used to anymore. This game feels like we are now living in that fully changed time, with Ichiban literally having no home to return to and no place where he belongs in Kamurocho. Ijincho still has a very lived-in feeling that the Yakuza games strike with their locales. Like for example, you could talk to this kid in front of the job center and he says how his mom made him go, and then you go to the other side of town and find a lady waiting at a bus stop on her way to work, and she's worried about her son getting his own job. I do want to mention that my playstyle for these games feels somewhat unconducive with the change in structure and gameplay. Normally how I play these games for the first time is that I play through the main story almost entirely uninterrupted, doing very few sub-stories if any at all. Then once I unlock Premium Adventure, I will go back and do them all. While not doing these didn't make me feel underleveled, I did feel like I was missing out on some of the gameplay stuff since a bunch of the very useful summons are sub-story related. related. The only thing I really disliked in the game was the business minigame. Now, I've never really been a fan of these type of minigames. If Mad Dog and Dragon Stance were not locked behind the cabaret and real estate minigames in Zero, I'd have zero desire to ever touch them. I don't think I would really dislike it as much as I do if I could just skip the stupid open for business bar filling crap, which just feels like a waste of time. I don't mind the actual management, even if it's slightly on the boring side, but holy fuck, who finds this shit fun? We're already over a page into this section of the video and I haven't even talked about the combat yet. It's surprisingly pretty standard for a class-based JRPG. Of course, it has the iconic Yakuza silliness with jobs like the chef where you're throwing pizza pans at people like Destructo discs. I do like the jobs that were in the game, but I do wish there were more, and the fact that 2 are locked behind DLC is whack as fuck, even if it's only $5. I also wish there were more interesting classes for the females since they don't have any of the male classes. Like, I just wanted to make Sayako a bulldozing wrecking ball, but I ended up just making her an idol so she could heal the team. Heat moves have been reworked into team attacks and special moves that play a cutscene every time, and you could really tell that the studio was having a blast when making these. And thankfully they allow you to skip the cutscenes because while they're fun and all, Essence of Mayhem does run pretty long and I'm tired of looking at it after the 40th hour. The game keeps the combat engaging by having QTEs for certain moves which powers them up, along with a parry which decreases incoming damage. It's not like Yik where it drags out the gameplay to do basic shit, so it's good in my book. The glaring issue with the new class-based system is how you actually change your classes. Since this is grounded in real life and based around Ichiban's Chunin delusions, you get your jobs from the job center, and it's the only place and way in the entire game to my knowledge where you can change your class. I see this as being hyper restrictive and ends up requiring you to do a lot of out-of-the-way trips to change a job. You don't know what you're going to be fighting in a dungeon, and if you go in and end up having a party member focused around an element that all the enemies are resist to, then you're just stuck with them for the entire dungeon. So you better hope this doesn't happen to one of your main damage dealers, or you're better off reloading a save before you entered. Then there's the issue when you want to grind in the arena that unlocks in chapter 12. This isn't so tenburi, so if you want to leave the arena once you reach a checkpoint and go change a class to level it up, then you need to go through a load screen to get back from the underground to the main streets of Sotenbori. Then you need to get a taxi all the way back to Ijincho and hope you don't get into a battle along the way, sit through another load screen, then get out of the taxi and either walk all the way to Hello Work or take another taxi to one nearby, which is another load screen. Hope you don't get into another battle on your way there again, change your job, then go to a store to get weapons for said class, hope you don't get into a battle on the way there where you're stuck with shit gear, then get a taxi back to Sotenbori, sit through another load screen, then walk back to the battle arena and hope you don't get into another fucking fight. Or you could take a taxi because you always come in on the opposite side of town from the arena, which then makes you sit through another load screen again, then sit through another load screen entering the arena, and only then can you finally get back to grinding. I played the game on the PS4 since I enjoy owning these games physically, and Screenwave Media was cool enough to hook me up with a code after my limited collector's edition from Pix and Love was delayed and trapped in the mail until January 14th. I probably just would have bought another copy as I'm most likely going to be playing this on PC for the retrospective when I eventually get to it, but I had already spent $100 importing the special edition from France. So this meant that the PS4 load times were really long, and this entire bullshit I just rattled off takes about 5 minutes each time, and that is beyond fucking annoying. As for the story, it's easily one of the best in the entire series, with its heartfelt narrative, lovable cast, and excellent passing of the torch.
配達は飲むんじゃねえぞ死にてえやつだけかかってこい
I really don't think there's ever been a truly bad story in any of these games. There have been a ton of dumb plot points, contrivances, or conveniences, and that's even the case in this game at times, but as a whole package, they're always really enjoyable. The story is really well paced, especially in the early hours of this game, which is even the thing that people commonly complain about with JRPGs, where the first 6+ hours are tutorials. That's certainly the case for this game, because you don't even get to change classes until chapter 5, but because the story is still moving forward and you're still getting new party members and new plot points are being introduced, it never feels slow and dull. Now, while the social commentary isn't exactly new, as things like Japan's homelessness issue and how society treats and views the homeless can be traced back all the way to the first game back in 2005, but it is extremely well written in this game, humanizing the issues and life struggles that have brought people to this point in their lives, and why it isn't easy as just getting a job to turn their life around. The biggest strength that the writing has is the camaraderie between what society looks down on as undesirables. Everyone has each other's back and works together in a heartwarming way. With Ichiban growing up in a soapland, he is the perfect vehicle to explore and explain these ideals to the other characters. Anytime he tells the Bleach Japan guys to fuck off is an absolute treat. The Yakuza series has always had slam dunks when it comes to new protagonists like Akiyama, for example, but they really hit it out of the park with Ichi, taking a lot of ideas and setups from Kiryu but inversing them. Further exemplified by their color palettes, Kiryu has a gray jacket with red highlights, accentuating Kiryu's stoic exterior but wild dragon interior, while Ichiban has a red jacket and gray highlights. He's a hothead, but when it comes down to it, his street smarts and upbringing allow him to come out on top. Foxcade pointed out on Twitter that Ichiban feels like Josuke to Kiryu's Jotaro, and that's honestly really apt. Then there's the rest of the main party, and I love all of them. They're all my favorite little gremlin has-beens. It's great. You'll get to see how their characters unfold in the main story, but also in drink links. These are basically your S-Link hangouts from Persona, or other support conversations like from Fire Emblem. But there are a few things that I think drink links do better than S-Links that I would love to see copied for an eventual Persona 6. So the way you raise your bond with party members is fighting in combat with them, or eating with them, and so on. This makes ranking up their bonds feel really natural and not get in the way. But the part that I really like is the fact that unlike Persona, where there is only one answer that gives you the most points towards your next rank, so there is always a quote-unquote right answer to give, all three in Yakuza 7 rank up a different social stat. Oh, and you can also see the level progression for your social stats. Drink links also do S-Link styled stories in half the time. Yeah, there's only 5 drink links for characters, and they always manage to be really gripping and satisfying. Adachi's and Sayako's are my personal favorites. If anything, they left me wanting more, but not in an, oh, this really didn't go anywhere kind of way. It was more in a, wow, I love these characters so much I just want to hang out with them more, which is great for the fact that these are the series' main characters now. The voice acting for this game is so fucking good. Kazuhiro Nakaya gave an award-winning performance as Ichi, especially with his final speech at the end of the game. The English dub is also really good, but I played the game in Japanese since that's what I've been doing since Yakuza 2. So hearing characters that up until this point have only been in Japanese and is what they sound like in my head, it's really weird, and there's a disconnect when I see and hear English come out of their mouths. Like, no amount of time is going to get me used to Daigo or Watase's English voice. I feel like it would be really dismissive of me to not mention the lengths they went in this localization, resyncing the mouth movements for English so they aren't dubbing over the Japanese mouth movements like they were in Yakuza 1, along with the game featuring both subtitles and dub titles, meaning that they have subtitles for the English audio along with subtitles that are accurate to the Japanese audio, which is fucking amazing. It's really interesting to go back and see how some of these scenes differ in localization. The story has a really good pace of escalation, like just in chapter 4 of the game you've already upped the conspiracy from Judgment. The only time it ever really fumbled it for me was sadly in chapter 9, where the entire events of that chapter felt mostly forced in order for a few events to happen so the rest of the plot can play out. If the Gomejul just told Nanba his brother was alive and well, then the rest of the game basically doesn't happen. They wouldn't have had to burn down their base and all of their homes, and the wall of muscle wouldn't have collapsed and the Omi wouldn't have been able to invade Ijincho. But they had to not tell Nanba so he would turn to Bleach Japan, and Ichi and the rest of the gang would chase after him so they could have a fight in the Bleach Japan office so Ichiban could see a picture on the wall of the Prime Minister and realize who he really is. This is about on level of dumb as the rubber bullets for me, and it really took me out of the game's narrative for a bit. But of course, like all of the games, it brings it around with some amazing moments. Despite its at times fumbling with the insane and convoluted twists and conspiracies, Yakuza 7 manages to be the most heartfelt entry in the whole series. The torch has been passed. I wait excited to see where they take Ichi and the gang next. Oh, and please localize Ishin, thank you. If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks for watching as always. If you really liked the video, please leave a like and comment and pass it around. And if you really like the channel, maybe consider becoming a patron on Patreon. All patrons get access to videos a day early, along with a new $7 and up tier, which you get access to behind-the-scenes footage and rough cuts of incomplete videos. I'm now going to shout out my $5 and up patrons who really help support the channel. Bully, Akita Fishkiyama, Lucy the Fox, Bluntman4200, Elliot Morton, Lotto, Nathan Redding, Papaya-chan, Slemf Tingle, Ben Johnson, Chichometrius, Dusty the Zombie, Ek Frazo, Filthyfinger69, Fishkami, Joshua DiLarino, Justin Collini, Kevin Velasquez, Matthew Elliott, Nicholas Pedinato, Onion Girl, Poke Joke S, Quartz, Ruben Rodriguez, Star Fox, Some Panda, the FOE3, The Unthinkable, and William Moore. Thanks so much, guys. As I said at the start of this video, the reason why I re-uploaded this as its own individual review is because the Game of the Year 2020 video didn't do very well, and based on my analytics in the YouTube studio, not many people made it to the Yakuza 7 review. Now, I really like this review, and I'm happy with how it came out, so I wanted to re-upload it as its own to see if it could possibly do better. At the time of recording this, I am near the end of Lost Judgment. I'm currently at chapter 10 of 13. I do want to do a video covering it. I'm not sure if it's going to be a long or small one. It all depends on how much I have to say about the game, but either way, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy whatever I end up making next. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.